Hey everyone, it's Mariana, and today I am back with another Game of Thrones recap and review. I am so sorry this video is just a little late, but my schedule has been all over the place. If you're new here, I do Game of Thrones videos every week while the show is airing. I will also be talking about the prequel series once that comes out. And in general, I talk about movies, books, TV series. So if that sounds interesting to you, I definitely think you should subscribe. All right, on to the latest episode. Spoilers ahead, of course, and let's talk about Game of Thrones Season 8, Episode 2, A Night of the Seven Kingdoms. This is a bit of an odd episode to recap because this is essentially the calm before the storm. We get a lot of different interactions between the characters that we have been following for years. Some of them haven't seen each other in a really long time. Some of them are just getting acquainted now, and some of them are just trying to reestablish where they stand and what future can possibly hold for them at this point. So there really isn't that much to recap as far as major plot points go, even though some of these interactions are very important, and I will talk about them in a few. But a major takeaway from this episode is giving these characters a bit of time to reflect, to prepare for the battle, to spend what may be their last moments together with the people they want to spend them with. Brian Cogman, who wrote this episode, as well as some other really good episodes, including Tyrion's trial, said that he wanted this one to be a love letter to the characters, and I think he very much succeeded. I loved the episode, by the way, in case you're wondering. I think as much as we all love battles and dragons and twists and turns, at the core of Game of Thrones and A Song of Ice and Fire are these flawed, complex, interesting characters and the relationships between them. These families being torn apart and maybe eventually brought back together, and we feel for these characters, and that's why every awful thing that happens to them along the way is so impactful. I got a few comments and DMs about this episode being slow and uneventful, and this is also something that keeps coming up in some discussions on social media. For example, I'm not saying Game of Thrones has been bad, but I don't think anything of consequence happened in the first two episodes. I don't mind transitional dialogue-heavy episodes, but it's a bit strange to have two of them in a 6-episode season. First of all, I wouldn't exactly say that nothing of consequence happened in the first two episodes. We have characters making progress on their arcs. We have conflicts being set up for the second half of the season. Although they might seem like small pieces of a puzzle, these pieces are coming together for what is going to be, I'm sure, an epic series finale. But more importantly, I'm pretty sure most of us are expecting episode 3 to be absolutely brutal and to kill off half of these people. We're probably going to lose some of our favorite characters next episode. And so this wasn't just important for character arcs and for grounding the characters and establishing where they stand on the eve of battle, but also for us as viewers and fans to see these characters together for the last time. Guys, this is the last time a bunch of these characters were together on screen. I am pretty sure this show is about to go full doom and gloom on us, so I will happily take all of the drinking in front of a fireplace scenes I can get. Also, Podrick singing is welcome anytime, anywhere. So, more specifically, onto the episode. We open with Jaime Lannister's trial, and it is pretty short. This is also where all of the characters finally find out that Cersei has never intended to send her army north. It looks bad for Jaime for about 5 seconds, but then Brienne steps in to defend him and vouch for him, which convinces Sansa that he can be free to fight with them. Jon is clearly distracted by his newly acquired knowledge about his heritage, but he wants as many people as possible in this fight, so he also has no interest in imprisoning or executing Jaime. This also is the start of my favorite storyline of this entire episode, and that is everything that happens between Jaime and Brienne. I have been looking forward to these two actually interacting and reuniting for a while now, and this episode was so satisfying on that front. First, with her vouching for him, then with him coming to talk to her and telling her he wants to fight under her command, which Brienne is very suspicious of, and finally, easily my favorite moment of the episode, when Jaime makes her a knight. This was such an emotional and beautiful moment. I just loved it. She tries to act like she doesn't care, but of course she does. And the smile on her face afterwards, it is so good. I cried, of course, and a lot of you agreed with me. Most of the responses I got as far as what your favorite part of the episode was had to do with Jaime knighting Brienne, and that just makes me so happy. And I love that they actually named the episode after this entire situation. They knew this was the strongest point. Also, A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms is a collection of tales of Dunk and Egg. This is Adventures of a Knight and his squire. The knight is Sir Duncan the Tall, who is actually an ancestor of Brienne of Tarth. So that's kind of a nice Easter egg there. I would highly recommend reading this if you haven't read this already, and if you're kind of intimidated by A Song of Ice and Fire in general, I think this is a very good kind of starting point for George R. R. Martin's writing, because you get a really nice taste of it, but it's not as heavy as it is in A Song of Ice and Fire. This is more like adventurous and fun, but still the same settings, and this is set about 100 years before what happens in A Song of Ice and Fire and Game of Thrones, so there's the Targaryen rule going on. Highly, highly recommend this book. Back to the episode, I also really liked Jaime's scene with Bran. First of all, when Bran throws that famous "the things we do for love" line back at Jaime that we heard way back when he pushed him out the window, that was such a great oh shit moment, and the look on Jaime's face was absolutely priceless. But mainly, their talk in the Godswood was very interesting, with this whole idea of how if this awful thing didn't happen to Bran, he wouldn't be who he is now, and a lot of things were set in motion by that in general. This scene also made me very concerned for Jaime's survival chances next episode because of that line, "How do you know there is an afterwards?" that Bran says to him. Obviously, there are 3 more episodes after the Battle for Winterfell, so there is some sort of afterwards for the world of Ice and Fire, and I doubt this is 3 episodes of whites and White Walkers just wandering around Westeros. But does that mean that Jaime's afterwards in particular is in question here? Because that makes me very, very concerned. I feel like his character arc is not complete yet. I think he has some things to do, like kill Cersei, but maybe Bran is just trolling. But I'm definitely concerned more than I was before now. Please don't murder my favorite character in episode 3. This is something that's kind of funny in general, because I feel like the writers might be trolling us a little bit and making sure we're nice and stressed for this episode 3, because we are sitting here and every time a character does something small or says something and refers to death, or like repeats a previous line that referred to death, we are immediately interpreting the signs and trying to figure out if that is a sign that this character or that character is going to die, and it's kind of hilarious, but I'm participating in this 100%. Most of the characters have said or done things that could be interpreted that way. Tyrion talks about his death and how maybe when he's dead, he'll march down to King's Landing and rip Cersei apart, which is also kind of a nice Valonqar prophecy nod. Jorah is someone I'm actually pretty much writing off at this point, particularly with Sam handing him the Tarly family sword. Theon is pretty much there to make the final sacrifice protecting Bran, which, by the way, the reunion between him and Sansa was so surprisingly powerful. I did not expect that to be as powerful and emotional as it was, and it was great. Also, this whole thing with people being safe in the crypts of Winterfell because it's the safest place to be, but is it though? They just kept repeating this over and over in this episode, and every time this was brought up, it just made me think more and more that it is not the safest place to be at all, especially considering that the Night King is kind of famous for his main power of raising people from the dead. So I don't know if being in a location where there are a lot of dead bodies constitutes being safe. Then there is that scene with Jon, Sam, and Ed with the whole "the last survivor burns the rest of us" thing. And also, shout out to Ghost in that scene, who finally showed up. Maybe he will actually do something during the battle. But yeah, I could go on and on with these signs of the possible character deaths that may or may not happen, that the writers have put there clearly on purpose to keep us on edge and to give us the feeling that nobody is safe. But let's be honest, it's impossible that everyone is going to die. So some of these have to be there just for the sake of tension. But this makes it kind of difficult to do death predictions for the next episode because everything is so up in the air except for a few characters who have a decent amount of plot armor because the rest of the season needs to be about something. So I would say the characters that are definitely safe are Dany and Jon and Sansa, and one of the Lannister brothers, hopefully both, and probably Arya is safe too. I think maybe Bran potentially has things to do as well, but I'm not sure about that, and maybe Brienne, but her arc seems pretty damn complete at this point, so it's not looking good for her for next episode. I keep thinking that Missandei and Grey Worm will get a happy ending, mainly because I hold the writing of the show to a higher standard than this cheesy plot device of characters making plans for their happy future just to have one or both of them die after this sweet goodbye situation that they had. Also, the actor who plays Grey Worm mentioned in an interview that people are going to be conflicted about his character by the end of the show, which I don't think his death would be very conflicting, or him coming back as a white would be very conflicting either. That would just be sad. But him saying that we're going to be conflicted makes me think that there's more to his story than just the Battle of Winterfell. We'll see though. Another takeaway from this episode is the amount of times Dany seems like she just doesn't belong here. She is outvoted at Jaime's trial. She has that wonderful scene with Sansa where they seem like they're going to become friends, but then Sansa drops the "what about the North" bomb, making it clear that the Northerners have no interest in kneeling for Daenerys. Which, by the way, I was so happy to hear Sansa acknowledge in that scene that Tyrion is a good man and has been nothing but good to her, has never been anything but decent to her. And if you remember, her sass to Tyrion last episode was the only issue I had with her character. So my girl Sansa is making things right this time around, and that makes me happy. Then when Theon shows up and he's there to fight for Winterfell and for the Starks and not for his supposed new queen, that's another sign for Dany that she doesn't really belong in Westeros at this point. And of course, at the end, Jon decides to drop the news about him actually being Aegon Targaryen, which is something I'm sure we will be revisiting after the battle. So all of this really makes Daenerys seem out of her element, and I don't know if this might be the beginning of the end for her, because I am sure she will respond with force and fire and blood like she has been lately. Or maybe she will retire to Essos and rule there and live happily ever after with Daario Naharis. Yeah, right. But I will say that even though I am not the biggest Daenerys fan in the world, I did actually feel pretty bad for her in this episode because she seemed really, really out of place. And considering that she wants to rule these people, it's not looking great for her. On a lighter note, a lot of you guys hated Arya and Gendry getting together. This was by far the most popular thing as far as your least favorite part of the episode goes. Apparently everybody thought that was really cringy and fan service. I personally find that funny because I didn't mind the scene at all. I thought it made complete sense in the situation, and I didn't find it to be particularly fan servicey, but you guys sure hated it. I mean, look, if you think this is very likely to be your last night in this world and your crush is just around the corner, I mean, wouldn't you? I just don't feel like this is such a crazy thing to do. What's also funny is that everyone cheered when Arya was brutally murdering people, and she was pretty much a child at that point. But a teenager is having sex on the show and everybody loses their mind. Maisie Williams is not even a teenager at this point, and sure, in the context of the show, she is a teenager, but in a medieval setting, that would make her pretty much an adult, so I don't really know what the fuss is all about. Yes, I get it, we saw her grow up on the show, but she's not a child anymore. My least favorite thing about this episode is that they keep cutting off conversations and leaving them on cliffhangers. I don't know what's up with that, but this happened a few times during this episode and a few times during episode 1, and I hope this trend goes away. I do not like it at all. We had Dany and Sansa's scene end on the Northern question just when it got tense, and then we got Tyrion, who is sitting down to talk to Bran, which I'm so annoyed that that was a tease, and that just got switched to a different set of people. I do believe they switched to Tyrion and Jaime. And then Jon telling Daenerys about his heritage got cut off too by the army of the dead arriving at the end. Like I said, I am not a fan of this trend, and I really hope it doesn't continue because it's just really cheesy TV writing. All right, guys, I think I'm going to wrap this up because this video is getting long and I'm pretty sure I talked about everything I wanted to talk about. I know there are a few things I didn't mention. Shout out to Tormund and his lack of filter, which always makes things entertaining. I love watching him on screen. Also, I highly recommend looking into Jenny's song, which is what Podrick was singing. I didn't want to open that can of worms because there is enough information there for an entire separate video, and we'd be here for another 20 minutes for sure. But this song and everything that surrounds it in the books has significance in the history of the world of Ice and Fire. So I would definitely recommend looking into this because I don't think this was an accident at all that they put this particular song in that scene. Okay, that's definitely it for this video. Let me know what you guys thought of the episode. Who do you think is going to survive episode 3? Who do you think is definitely not going to survive episode 3? And also, who is that final character that you are rooting for the remainder of the series? I would love to know. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it, and if you did, please don't forget to give it a thumbs up, share it, subscribe to my channel, and as always, I hope you're having a wonderful day, and I will see you very soon in my next one. Hopefully my recap of the Battle for Winterfell will not be this late. Alright, bye!